Hello, I'm John Bachman.
And I'm Miranda Kahn. Coming up today on Newsmax Now. Extreme weather hits America's heartland. Tornadoes rake Oklahoma, leveling buildings, and the threat is not over yet. See why today could bring another round of destruction.
And a big test today for Mitch McConnell's leadership in the U.S. Senate. Can he get the 60 votes he needs to avoid swallowing Rubio and Cotton's poison pills?
And what President Clinton calls an accounting mistake, while Hillary and the White House agree to disagree about the president's authority on immigration.
We'll talk about that and much more during our roundtable today and throughout the next 4 hours right here on Newsmax Now.
And welcome to this Thursday edition of Newsmax Now.
And we start with what could be another rough day of weather in places like Oklahoma and Kansas. Now, what's left today, this is it, in places like near Oklahoma City. The area was just hammered by powerful thunderstorms. It spun up late yesterday afternoon, and the results were funnel clouds like this one, tornadoes touching down, several touchdown ripping through parts of Oklahoma and Kansas. This man survived with the roof being ripped off his hotel in Norman.
The windows got blown out, so we went to the bathroom to hide, and we looked out the bathroom door, and you can see the roof start raising up, and about 30 seconds later, the roof peeled back, and then rain started pouring in.
About a dozen people were hurt. At one point during the storms, Oklahoma City's airport had to be evacuated, and 8 inches of rain fell on that area, which also caused some flooding. Forecasters say the threat of severe weather is going to extend right through the weekend.
Wow. It's looking more and more like the attack on a cartoon exhibit in Texas was the work of lone wolf militants. Despite ISIS claiming responsibility, investigators have not found a direct link between the group and the shooters who were killed in that attack, Elton Simpson and Nadir Sufi. What they have found is a lot of interaction between Simpson and jihadists online. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson tells Newsmax TV there are between 46 and 90,000 Twitter accounts in support of ISIS.
We're searching for needles in haystacks. The problem is we've got a much larger haystack or more of them and a whole lot more needles.
And he warns that technology is outpacing America's ability to gather intelligence.
Well, a federal appeals court has just ruled that the NSA's program scooping up phone records was not authorized by Congress. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that the Patriot Act does not allow for the collection of millions of records and phone calls. It has also ordered the case be sent back to a lower court.
New questions emerged today about what kinds of punishments may be on the way for the New England Patriots, especially Tom Brady. The NFL, in a report out yesterday, says the team almost certainly used underinflated balls during last season's AFC Championship game, a move that breaks league rules. The more than 240-page report also says Brady was, quote, at least generally aware of the scheme.
Residents in a tiny North Dakota town had to be evacuated when an oil train derailed. They're now back home, though. That train jumped the tracks yesterday, sparking a smoky fire. Investigators are still looking for the cause. After a couple of big oil train accidents, though, the debate over the Keystone XL oil pipeline, the Washington Post has been taking a look at oil safety. In general, they found that transporting oil by pipeline causes fewer accidents.
Former President Bill Clinton places blame on the accountant for questions about his foundation's donations. While on a Clinton Foundation trip in Africa, the former president says people filling out tax forms made a mistake when listing foreign donations. He tells NBC that there was no attempt to hide those donations. They were just put in the wrong place, and he says the mistake will be corrected.
Well, we should have another Republican candidate for president in just a few weeks. Rick Santorum on Twitter telling the world that he is promising a big announcement in just about 3 weeks on May the 27th. It's going to come in Pittsburgh, close to his hometown. Earlier this month, Santorum set up an account to finance trips to early voting states. And last week, he was in South Carolina, an early primary state. Before that, he was in Iowa, the first of the early primary states. And he's going to be back there next week, where he did very well in 2012. And it's Election Day in Great Britain. Prime Minister David Cameron heading here to vote in a very tight election. Polls say neither of the major parties will win enough seats to have a majority in Parliament, meaning smaller parties will likely play a bigger role in forming a coalition government. All right, we want to turn back now to our exclusive interview with Senator Ron Johnson and the way technology is helping ISIS recruit thousands of potential jihadists right here in the United States.
The reality of what's happening with ISIS, how they are effectively using social media to recruit, inspire. I mean, just think about how sick that is, creating these videos of beheadings and other barbaric acts that actually inspires, people like what we just witnessed, these two that committed the terrorist act in Texas.
Fort O'Connell, ISIS is able to reach millennials. And I know in Washington and really in advertising around the country, there are a whole lot of people trying to use social media who have done so effectively. Why hasn't the State Department, why haven't our government entities been more effective in your opinion?
Well, I think that they have been trying to do this. I also think that it's really not on the interest radar of most Americans. I mean, 84% of Americans see ISIS and a lot of terrorist groups as a critical threat to the United States, but they don't exactly understand how these franchises work and how they are able to radicalize Americans in particular within our borders using social media and the internet. The problem is it's the general public that doesn't quite understand how ISIS works. If the general public would understand, I promise you the State Department would be doing more.
Ron, we heard White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest there in Miranda's report saying the White House is concerned, and your counterpart in the House, Mike McCall, said these are exactly the kind of attacks we're concerned about. Not necessarily ISIS fighters per se, but really more ISIS supporters. Do you find that to be the case?
We'll say that his best guess is that there are 46,000 overt ISIS supporter accounts on Twitter. The high estimate is about 90,000. So somewhere between 46 and 90,000 accounts on Twitter that support ISIS. It gives you the scope of the problem, the fact that we're searching for needles in haystacks. The problem is we've got a much larger haystack or more of them and a whole lot more needles.
So there you go, Miranda, and also your report there that JD referenced yesterday highlighted this problem as well. And this is what I guess we're going to have to look at. This is also part of this larger free speech debate. You can, of course, go on to Twitter. You can criticize your government. You can say a lot of things, but there's definitely a line that has been crossed with a lot of those tens of thousands of Twitter users that Ron Johnson was talking about.
Right, and a lot of these social media sites are, taking it upon themselves to take down some of these accounts, but as soon as they take one down, another one pops up.
We reported on a story a couple of weeks ago with the executives at YouTube talking about the amount of video that is uploaded, thousands of hours, I think, every single minute. Just let that sink in. It makes sense if you think about it. Uploaded to YouTube, and they cannot properly control some of these radical Islamic groups that are posting the videos that Senator Johnson was referencing.
Well, they definitely have a tough task ahead of them.
And also Fort O'Connell, they're making a good point about the political pressure that needs to come from the American public. They need to do a better job and I guess maybe be less naive about what ISIS is doing on the internet. And just like a lot of people, including parents, take a look at what their kids are doing online. This is part of the discussion now because a lot of these teens, contrary to popular opinion, actually have some family structure in places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there's communities. This has got to be part of the discussion that is being had in these religious institutions, mosques, and places like that.
I don't envy parents right now because it's a lot. We criticize parents for being so-called helicopter parents, and at the same time, we live in different times now. You have a daughter, and I'm sure these are some of the. I know she's young now.
I've never thought about the threat of ISIS on social media.
Right, and I'm sure many parents that are watching right now never thought of that either.
Right.
it's not something you think about. You worry about
we played that
predators.
Clip also. Remember from the mother of one of the two suspects. I believe it was Elton Simpson's mother.
Yes.
And she's in tears, and obviously, maybe she's probably blaming herself for not. I don't know. There's probably nothing she could have done.
It's hard because you can't keep tabs on your children every minute.
Especially when they're adults. But again, there's a record. The FBI had been watching these Twitter accounts as going back as far as 2006, and it took police officers, SWAT team members, which are on the front lines in this country of these types of attacks, taking them out before anybody else got hurt.
We'll continue to follow the story and, of course, bring you updates as soon as we get them. Stay tuned, though, because Russia is hoarding gold. See why you should be worried about it. Former Air Force pilot Todd Wood will join us. And later, the case of one Baltimore man that looks eerily similar to that of Freddie Gray. And later, Bill Cosby versus a heckler. All that and much more coming up on Newsmax Now.